today I want to tell you about my favorite plants of this last summer, just plants that have really been standing out to me, bringing me a lot of joy for whatever reason. Some of them have been growing extraordinarily well. Some of them have come into their own. These are just plants that I really want to talk about. This summer has been probably the most busy summer of my life. Ryan got a new job where he works through the summer, so it has been a little bit of adjusting. There's a lot of spare time in the day where I'm watching my kids, but you know, maybe a little bit bored, which brings me to Skillshare, who's the sponsor of today's video. I'm very appreciative of them for not just supporting my channel, but also for being there in these boring summer hours productively through their learning platform. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts, film, illustration, design, freelance productivity, and more. Skillshare can help take your career, skills, hobbies, and side hustles to the next level. And it really has been so helpful for what started out as a small YouTube side hustle into what it is today, my full-time job. And I do attribute a lot of the knowledge I've learned to Skillshare. Well, I can highly recommend a learning path for any of you that also want to start your own YouTube channels and potentially grow it to be a full-time career. Is called Grow Your First YouTube Channel. Create your own thriving YouTube channel from initial setup to finding your ideal audience and creating high quality, clickable content. There are 6 classes total down this learning path. The YouTube for Beginners course, how to speak confidently on camera, how to content plan and manage creative projects. Even if starting and growing a YouTube channel isn't for you, there are so many valuable classes on Skillshare. Now is the perfect time to become a member because Skillshare is offering the first 500 of you that join using my link down below a free month trial. And you can learn so much in just 1 month with Skillshare. Be sure to head to the description box and the pinned comment to get started. Become a member today. Huge thank you to Skillshare. I love ya. I love you, Skillshare. Let's get back into the elephant in the room, my Jose Buono. Or like all of my favorite summer plants, but we'll start with this one. Number 1, Philodendron Jose Buono. Outside of everything else, I think that we can all agree that this plant is extremely striking and beautiful. The variegation on this plant is very different from a lot of other kinds of variegation we see in plants. I love how the variegation is kind of sectoral, but then also like modeled within the sections of variegation. I mean, like, that is just such a stark variegation. It's so cute. I love little speckly, freckly plants like this. Not even only that, it is also a very easy care plant, like probably one of the easiest care plants in my collection as far as large philodendron go. I'll turn it around here and show you. I did attach it to a stake. I just really love this plant for how easy it is to get these super large leaves to grow. My top care tips for this plant, if you want really big leaves and a really nice variegation, is to give it a lot of light. I have mine under some grow lights downstairs, so it gets really, really good light. In conjunction with that higher light, I have it potted in a super, super chunky mix full of chunky perlite, pumice, orchid bark, sphagnum moss, vermiculite, all those good chunky substrate things that allow me to water this plant pretty frequently. I would say I water it like every 5-6 days-ish. And that, I believe, is why it is able to grow these large leaves in my regular household humidity, which the humidity in my house is only around like 30-40%, so not high at all. And yeah, no need for moss pulls with this plant. I love this plant. It's a really rewarding, fairly low effort plant for the payoff. Like, you look at this and you would think that it's a really hard plant to care for, but it is absolutely not. I am never stressed about this plant, truly. Okay, I'm gonna move it out of the way now. It's blocking my light. Should we move it back here? Yeah. Keep her in the background for you to gush over. Can't even see it back there. Oh, but I can. Looks good. Okay, let's turn you so you can see it. Wow. Plant number 2, Aloe Vera, which is a plant I've had in my collection for a very, very long time. years now at this point. It's one that before downsizing my collection just kind of blended in with everything else. You know, it's a pretty basic plant, but since downsizing, I've really grown to love and appreciate the unique beauty of this plant. I love the shape of it. I love like the harder looking plants. I don't know if that makes sense, but like succulents and stuff just look kind of like firm and statuesque. Yeah, statuesque. You little sexy. It really, really stands out, especially now that I've pulled it away from the majority of my plants. It really draws the eye. And I mean, I really appreciate that in this plant. I do have some expensive, like sought after plants that I feel like don't command attention as much as something like this aloe vera does. I think it is absolutely beautiful. I also love how it is like functional as well. You can see we've taken a couple, actually I've only taken one leaf off since I repotted it, but I took a leaf off and we used it for sunburns this summer, which obviously like the beauty of the plant itself and a functional purpose really sets it above the rest for me. It also has this baby here and I love this plant-planter combination. Honestly, once I paired this plant with this planter together is when my brain kind of connected that the styling of plants themselves are something I really enjoy about the hobby. I love being able to put plants and planters together to create a look. I don't know, just to like help take the plant display to the next level. You know, like, okay, this actually lives in, this is actually a cover pot for this plant, but it looks good in this nursery pot, but putting this plant inside of a planter that I bought tailored specifically for this plant, like just elevates it, you know, and I love that. I love that. It's also a very easy care plant. It does need high light, I would say, for it to grow well. Another thing I really like about it is it's a, what's the word? Vocal. Plus it's a vocal plant. How I tell it needs to be watered is I just squeeze a stem gently, and if there's not a whole lot of give to it, the plant is fine, but if it is like squishing a little more than normal, that's how I know to add a little bit of water. I couldn't even tell you how often I water this, but I do squeeze the foliage like probably every other day, maybe even every day, because this sits in my morning coffee spot. So like we're morning coffee buddies. It's kind of cute. It's really precious actually. And I enjoy our morning coffee sessions together. Thank you for being there for me. Aloe vera. Okay, next up, which one do I want to talk about next? Should we switch gears to something completely opposite of the aloe? Yes. Begonia Nong Gensis. It's clear why this is on this list, right? It's clear. Do you see those chocolate chip leaves? That is why it's on this list. I think begonia are plants that I love, but often struggle with, especially in my regular household environment. But this Nong Gensis is doing just fine through the summer. I think with the warmer weather, it just kind of has come alive. I do think that's something with begonias. They sometimes go like dormant a little bit in the colder, but they bounce back. They can bounce back as long as you don't give up on them. I don't know if it's a true dormancy, but this one is worth that extra effort. It is so different from anything else in my collection. It's so different from honestly any plant I really like see even scrolling on social media. I think it is so, so beautiful. I love a really big textured leaf, and the Nong Gensis just like takes that to the new level. Not only are these leaves insane, the new leaves as they come in are really, really cute too, because they're kind of like fuzzy. You know, each of these little chocolate chips has one singular little hair coming out of it, which relatable. It has a singular hair growing out of each of its chocolate chip moles. And when the leaves are really small, they're very clustered up together, which leaves the new growth looking really, really fuzzy, soft, and like animal-esque, which I really love. I would say this tolerates pretty low light, and the lower light it gets, the less you have to water it, but there is definitely a balance where Like, this is not the easiest care plant, clearly. There's a balance that has to be found with this where you're able to keep up with watering and keep the moisture up, but it also gets enough light to photosynthesize and grow. So I think we've finally gotten that balance. You could probably get away with giving it a little bit higher light than I do, but you would also have to water it more frequently. So I do let this dry out like probably 50% between waterings. I top the water off twice a week in this little bottom watering vessel, and that seems to be keeping the plant happy. Another little care thing about this one, it does get a little bit of diva care compared to the rest of my plants. Most everything else is pretty low maintenance, but this one I absolutely do not water it with tap water, rainwater, snow water that has been warmed up to room temperature, or best of all, during the warm months, I water it with secondary water, which where I live is water that comes straight from the lake, full of fish poop and all those good nutrient kind of things that plants love. And yeah, the plant loves it. So, and I do have this growing in just sphagnum moss. It's cool, right? It is, wow. Wow. Of course, this is one of my summer favorites because I don't get to appreciate it in the winter because it does die back. So had to throw it in this one. Do you guys remember a few videos back when I spoke about why I dislike Hoya? Do you remember? Because guess what? Plant number 4 is a Hoya. Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. This beauty right here is the exception to my dislike of Hoya rule. There are a few exceptions actually, but this is a Hoya Fungii. Fungii. God, I do this every time I talk about this plant, which is not often, but I forget to look it up. Anyway, we're gonna call it Hoya Fungii. Oh, we should call it Fungii because it's fun. Because guess what? It always blooms. Going back to my dislike of Hoya video, this one here, the blooms are sometimes a reason I really dislike Hoya because they're so messy. They leak sap, the blooms dry up and fall off and kind of spill around everywhere. It's just a lot of cleanup, okay? It is a lot of cleanup. They also sometimes don't smell good. And once a Hoya blooms, they bloom, like they keep going and going and the blooms just get more and more prolific pretty rapidly, which I mean, like right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 4 peduncles. There's maybe even another, 5 peduncles hidden here that have bloomed recently. They'll just bloom more and more. So things can get out of hand if you have a big Hoya collection that is blooming. Anyway, I really dislike the smell of a lot of Hoyas. I'm someone with a freaking Tanjiro nose. I can smell like everything. Like if you fart across the house, I can smell it in like 10 seconds, okay? I have a really good sense of smell. So when a Hoya blooms, even downstairs in my basement that I don't like, I'm thinking Hoya Bertonier. I freaking hate the way that one smells. I can't stand it. I got rid of that one because I could not stand the smell of the blooms. Anyway, this one, I like the smell of the blooms, so it's really nice. I don't know if everybody that enters my house can smell it, but when I walk in the room of this plant, I can definitely smell the blooms. They are like a powdery floral smell, and I don't often like floral scent, but these ones are very nice and like sweet floral smelling, you know? Yeah. Love, it smells so good. It's so cute. It is growing pretty well. I think the leaf shape themselves are really cute. And yeah, another very, very easy care plant. It can tolerate some drought. It can tolerate a little bit of excess watering if that happens to happen. That doesn't happen very often in my house, but yeah, it is a really nice, full looking Hoya. I don't even mind how long and wild these tendrils are getting. That is something that sometimes bothers me about Hoya, but for some reason with this one, it doesn't bother me. And I think it's because it is such a prolific bloomer, but in a fun way. Again, it comes back to like, there's a balance. This plant has found that balance for me. The messy bloom, but also enjoyable bloom balance. This plant does appreciate pretty high light, and this plant does get high light. It sits here directly underneath this grow light. So like maybe 6-8 inches away from the grow light. It gets really high light, and I do water it once a week. And this is what we're left with. During the summer, I do also water pretty much all of my plants with that secondary water I spoke about. This one in particular, I do take a little extra time to fill a spray bottle with that secondary water or liquid dirt and spray it down like tops and bottoms of all the leaves and all of the tendrils, just the whole plant really, because they are epiphytes. They are epiphytes and they can take in nutrients through their foliage and their vines, and also I think their flowers too. I could be making that up. Definitely, if you have a Hoya and it's a Hoya that you want to do well and you don't want to chuck out like I did with most of my Hoya, consider spraying down the foliage. They really seem to like it. So yeah, highlight, and it can tolerate a little bit both ways with the watering. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty, right? Oh, do you see that? I know this plant is very, very frequently on my top favorite plants list, and I do these like once a season, and this is pretty much always on my list because it's so cool and weird. This is a Cactus geometricus, and especially this summer it belongs on the list because it put out a new ball. You see this? This is a new ball since summer started. Kind of hoping it puts another ball out right here, but even without that third ball, it's definitely giving me like Jogo vibes. Very, very easy care. I keep this downstairs on a south-facing window. It gets really, really good southern light through most of the days. Another vocal one because when it gets thirsty, on each of these little balls, if you look really, really close up, it has little sections all over it. You can see them especially pronounced on these smaller balls here, but on this bottom ball, those are very, very smooth. As it gets thirsty and kind of deflates or uses up its water stores, the bottom ones especially will get a little bit like lumpy and bumpy and a little bit more pronounced. Like this bottom ball, when it starts to get thirsty, they're much more pronounced. Right now, it is a little bit thirsty. I could probably go ahead and water this, but I am going to let it dry out just a little bit more before I give it a little bit of water. I would say I water this like once every 2 weeks. I love this plant. I think it's so cool, so fun. It has brought me a lot of joy over the years and zero stress. I have never once felt stressed about this plant. Cactus geometricus. Plant number 6, another little weirdo plant, is my Dania glocka, finally growing decently well this summer. This is a plant I've had for, I think this is maybe is it only my second? This is only my second summer with this plant, but last year I just decided to sulfur treat all of my plants because I was having outbreak after outbreak of multiple different plant pests, and sulfur can take care of really any plant pest out there, although it is very, very hard and rough and brutal on the plants as well. So this plant died pretty well back. This is another like dormancy plant, which I talked about. I don't like dormancy plants, but this is an exception. Like I said, there's always an exception to the rules that I make. I don't really have to do anything special with it. It just kind of like manages itself in and out of dormancy and doesn't need any extra care. I do just water this a little bit less in the winter time when it drops all of its leaves and dies back. But for some reason this year, the leaves kind of grew in less bulbous. Before it looked like the tree star on Land Before Time, but now, I mean, it's kind of coming in tree star-esque at the top. But these ones were coming in really, really thin and like fingery. They looked more like fingers down here, less like tree stars, and now they're looking very tree star again. So I'm glad about that. I do think that maybe, actually, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that the difference between the more like bulbous tree star leaves and the fingery leaves down at the bottom here is the amount of light. I moved this away from the window, and that's actually when it started putting out leaves like this. So I do think maybe it was just getting a little bit too much light. Wow, it's all coming together now. Saying it out loud, like somehow it all just like connects and makes more sense than when I'm just thinking and talking to myself. Anyway, I think it's a really, really cool looking plant. Oh my gosh, it is so cute. And I'm so glad I didn't give up on this one. I almost gave up on it because like I said, last year it grew like maybe 4 leaves. It was very, very sad after the sulfur treatment. It's so cute. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, a Dania glocka. It wouldn't be a video of mine if I didn't speak about a Syngonium, and today we are specifically talking about this Syngonium, which I think is a Syngonium angustatum. It also may be called Syngonium ribbon. I don't know. Syngonium are really hard to identify, I think. I mean, for me anyway. So I'm not 100% certain what this is. If you're like fairly certain you know what this is, I would love to know if you know. Please enlighten me, because it drives me crazy not 100% knowing what this is, especially because it's a plant that I love so much. Like I mentioned with the Jose Bueno, I love really long, skinny leaves. Fits the bill. Long, skinny, beautiful. Oh, I love them. And then they get kind of loby up here, which, yeah, another thing about me, I love loby leaves. So this kind of like fits all of my favorite. This is a cutting I just potted back into here actually yesterday. Just gonna push that in a little bit further, but Syngonium are so fun. I do know that often they're seen as like a little bit difficult or finicky plants, which I can see how they could be, but my trick for Syngonium is, and keep them in either sphagnum moss or a very chunky mix so that I can water them really frequently. They do like to have wet roots, but they don't like to have wet, compacted roots with no airflow. You know, it comes down to airflow. I think airflow is the biggest difference in being able to keep healthy Syngoniums. I do think that that's like my #1 Syngonium tip, is to give them a lot of airflow down around the roots. This is another kind of plant that I like to give anything but tap water, really. Filtered water is great, rainwater is great, melted snow is great. I mean, obviously it differs variety to variety, and we are talking about this one specifically, but it does a lot better on not tap water. But the tap water is really hard where I live. Tap water changes from place to place, so where I live, they do not like the tap water here. Obviously, if you can give them some humidity, that's good, but they don't absolutely need it. So it's kind of nice about them. Isn't it cute? Oh, and I love it in this planter, which is actually one from my own shop. The Foliage Fix. I think I'll be restocking soon, but I do think it's so cute. This is another one where I didn't fully appreciate the plant until I found the perfect planter for it. Syngonium angustatum or ribbon, I believe. Next, I really felt like I needed to talk about this plant again. This is a Ripsalis crucerusuela. Squella. I think it's not gonna come at any surprise that this plant is on the list, because this is probably one of my most mentioned plants in my videos lately, like I would say spring through summer. It's another one of those plants that before I downsized my collection and I just kind of coated all my surfaces and plants, it got lost in the shuffle, partially because it's such an easy care plant, I didn't really have to worry about it, partially because it does kind of blend in unless it's given its own space to really shine, you know, and it has shown, it's shined, it's shining, and will continue to shine in my collection because it now has its own space. I think this plant is really cool because it can look one way any given time, but then as it puts out new growth, like it really changes the overall look of the plant. It's really, really cool and interesting, and I love looking at it. The new growth is really, really cute, and yeah, I have nothing bad to say about this one. It can tolerate some severe neglect. I'm telling you guys, I let this sucker dry out so much back when I had too many plants around my house to take care of, when I couldn't keep up with everything. I hardly ever watered this, and no, it didn't grow amazingly at that time, but it has bounced back since then, which I think says a lot. Plants like this, I really appreciate where they can bounce back, and that's what it comes down to. And it is a very, very tough plant that way. I think ideally these plants get a lot of light and a lot of water, but it is kind of a sliding scale, as with most plants, but especially this plant, it's kind of a sliding scale. Like if you give the plant less light, you're going to need to water it less so that you don't rot the plant out, and vice versa. If it gets really high light, it's going to need to be watered more frequently to help like keep up with the growth, and so things don't dry out too much and like die off. But it is a very forgiving plant, and I really appreciate a very forgiving plant. So that's why I'm recommending it to you today. Or wait, this isn't a plant recommendations list, but I guess it is because they're my favorite plants. So yeah. Oh, and this new growth coming in is just so freaking cute. I love it. I love when it throws out long little rat tails like this. Oh, so cute. I would love to have a pet rat, but Ryan will not go for it. So I guess this is as close as we're gonna get. with this Ripsalis. Those are all the plants that are really standing out to me this summer and have stood out to me this summer that I get a lot of extra enjoyment out of. I mean, I get enjoyment out of all my plants, of course. I love taking care of them for multiple different reasons. These plants, these are the plants that kind of remind me to check on my plants, I think. Honestly, I think that's what it comes down to at the moment. So these are the plants that are keeping me on top of my plant game because they're growing so well and I just love looking at them. I would love to hear what your current favorite plants are, and also if you're someone whose favorites change season by season. That's how my favorites really changes seasonally, because you know, different plants grow better or worse in different seasons. So I would love to hear both of those things from you. Please leave a comment down below. Thumbs up or thumbs down this video if you like this kind of content. And again, please be sure to check out Skillshare using my link in the description box or the pinned comment. It is very, very helpful for my channel. Really appreciate it. So I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye! Thought I'd change it up.